I never imagined that one ordinary workday would change the way I looked at my job and my life. Being a professional consultant, I've dealt with all kinds of clients, some polite, some demanding, some even rude. But nothing prepared me for what I experienced the day my client opened the door in a silk robe and whispered, "I've been waiting for you." At first I thought I had misheard, but no, the look in her eyes told me I hadn't. It all started when I received a last-minute booking. The name on the file was Elena, a wealthy entrepreneur who lived in a quiet part of town. She needed urgent financial consultation, at least that's what her assistant told me. When I arrived, the house itself looked like something out of a movie, grand, modern, yet strangely empty. The curtains were drawn, and the only sound was the faint trickle of a fountain outside. I rang the doorbell, and that's when the door slowly creaked open, revealing Elena. She wasn't dressed like any client I had ever met. Instead of business attire, she stood there in a long silk robe, her hair cascading over her shoulders, and an expression that was both mysterious and unsettling. And then she whispered, "I've been waiting for you." For a moment, I froze. My mind raced. Was this some kind of mistake? Did she confuse me for someone else? I tried to keep my composure. "Good evening, Ms. Elena," I said professionally, holding up my briefcase. "I'm here for the consultation." But instead of answering, she smiled faintly and stepped aside, motioning for me to enter. The inside of the house was even stranger. It was spotless, almost too perfect, like a stage set. Candles flickered in the living room, casting soft shadows across the walls. A glass of wine was already poured on the table. Something wasn't right. We sat down and I pulled out my notes, trying to steer the situation back to business. "So, let's talk about your financial portfolio." But she interrupted, leaning closer. "Do you always take your work so seriously?" she asked. Her tone wasn't professional. It was playful, testing me. I forced a smile. "It's my job, too." Elena studied me carefully, almost as if she was trying to see how far she could push me. She sipped her wine slowly, never breaking eye contact. Then, out of nowhere, she asked, "Do you believe people can be truly honest when money is involved?" That question threw me off. I had been prepared for numbers, contracts, and reports, not philosophical riddles. I responded cautiously. "I think honesty is rare, but it still exists." Her lips curled into a smirk. "Interesting answer." The night grew stranger. Instead of discussing her finances, Elena began testing me in subtle ways. She left a diamond bracelet on the edge of the table, right where I could see it, then excused herself to the kitchen. I knew instantly what this was: a trap, a test. She wanted to see if I'd touch it. I didn't. I kept my hands folded, waiting. When she returned, she glanced at the bracelet, then back at me. And for the first time, her smirk softened into something else. Respect. "You're not like the others," she whispered. That's when she finally told me the truth. She wasn't testing my financial expertise. She was testing me. Elena explained that ever since she inherited her wealth, people had used her, lied to her, pretended to care, all for money. Even her closest friends had betrayed her. She had grown cold, distrustful. And tonight, she wanted to see if I was different. That's why she staged everything. The silk robe, the wine, the bracelet. It wasn't seduction. It was a character test. I sat there in silence, processing everything. Part of me felt relieved, but another part felt angry. She had manipulated the situation, toyed with my professionalism. But then I looked at her, truly looked at her. Beneath the elegance, she seemed lonely, desperate for a reason to trust someone again. "Money can buy a lot," I told her gently, "but it can't buy peace of mind. If you keep testing people like this, you'll only push the good ones away." Her eyes widened slightly, as if no one had ever dared speak to her that way before. For the first time that evening, the atmosphere shifted. We spent the rest of the night actually discussing her finances. Real numbers, real strategies. No more games. By the end of the consultation, she looked at me differently. Not as a stranger, not as someone to test, but as a professional she could finally trust. As I packed my things and stood to leave, Elena walked me to the door. "You passed," she said softly. I smiled faintly. I wasn't trying to pass a test, I was just doing my job. She laughed quietly. "That's exactly why you passed." And with that, I left her mansion, the image of her silk robe and whispered words forever etched in my memory.